Tuesday, August 27th, 2013. This is a board meeting of the Rhinebeck Central School District Board of Education. Our first order of business is, do we have any nominations for Vice President of the Board of Education? This is unfinished business from our organizational meeting. We have Diane, yes?
Can I nominate Mark Fleischhauer?
Mark Fleischhauer. Do we have any other nominations? Seeing none. All those in favor? No? Oh, second. We have a second for that nomination. Lisa Rosenthal. All those in favor of Mark Fleischhauer for Vice President for this coming school year? Say aye. Aye? Okay.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Come on. Thank you, Mark. So that motion passes, and thank you for stepping up. And congratulations. Terrific. Great. So we move on now to approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 13th, 2013 regular meeting?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Deirdre. Any amendments or changes? All those in favor? That's Shulkin, Burns, Fleischhauer, and Dalbert. Abstaining? Rosenthal, Lyons, and Quinteros. That motion passes. We now come to our part of the meeting for public comment. If we have any members of the public who would like to comment, you can raise your hand and I'll acknowledge you. If you would like to give us your name and address your comments to the board, and you have 5 minutes. So.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. Good evening, I'm Antonetta Simcata, and this is my husband, Brian Dykeman. We have 2 sons in the Rhinebeck school system. My son, Jack Dykeman, is a 7th grader. I apologize, I have to read what I wrote.
Okay.
I've come here tonight to voice my concern and discuss possible solutions to the lottery that was implemented by the BMS staff to select students for the 2 Spanish classes that are presently in place. I consider such a lottery system unethical and possibly even illegal in a school setting where the winners are allowed to foster their interests in Spanish for the next 2 years, while the losers, unfortunately Jack is one of them, are forced to accept a lottery chance loss that could potentially impact them through most of their high school career. For students like my son Jack, who want to continue to take Spanish at the upper levels, they have a disadvantage by comparison to their classmates who won the lottery. Those who win the lottery are allowed to master basic foundations at middle school in grades 7 and 8 in Spanish, while the losers of the lottery must wait 2 years before they could potentially take Spanish at the high school. This does not appear to be the best practice approach for student success. While I have not spoken with Mr. Chemnitzer regarding this matter, I have spoken with Ms. Fountain and Mr. Phelan. Thank you. I appreciate their time, their sympathy for the present situation, and willingness to discuss this matter. According to Ms. Fountain, there are 45 students scheduled to take Spanish and 13, including Jack, on a waiting list to enter Spanish should a scheduled student drop out of the program. When Mr. Phelan and I spoke, I made the following suggestions. 1, create an additional 3rd 7th grade class and pay the Spanish teacher for the extra class. This is what the district that I teach at is. Mr. Phelan stated that according to the contract, a teacher at Rhinebeck may teach an additional class in lieu of a duty, and they cannot be forced to teach the extra class. That is understood. I am not clear if there is specific language in the contract which precludes a teacher from being paid for teaching the additional class. Another option, option 2, although this is rather late in the summer, it would be to hire a part-time teacher to teach the additional class. At the middle school that I teach at, the guidance counselors meet with parents and students at the end of January, the beginning of the 2nd semester, through the end of March, to discuss present grades and select their courses for the upcoming school year. At the end of the meeting, parents sign the coursework schedule and are well informed about the courses of the next year. This also allows administrators to make staff arrangements to accommodate student scheduling needs. Imagine my surprise when the week before school starts, this was just Saturday, I received Jack's schedule, and it's not what I thought I had enrolled him in. It's little consolation to be told by the guidance counselor that the form disclaimer states students may not be scheduled in the courses that they chose in May. I had no idea that this applied to required courses, but rather electives. For those who didn't win the lottery, the delay in the schedule information appears to be deliberately late with the intention of forcing a parent helpless at this late point in the summer to prevent such an egregious process. I feel that it's autonomous. The last option, number 3, that I did not discuss with Mr. Phelan and had hoped not to discuss is to increase student enrollment in the existing 2 Spanish classes. I am unaware of a class size cap at the middle school level, and while I would not ordinarily advocate for a larger class size, remember I am a teacher, so I do understand class size does matter, I feel that it is a much wiser decision to include all students rather than excluding them, even if the larger class size is just temporary until a more suitable situation can be implemented to accommodate all students who are interested in taking Spanish. It is much more pedagogically sound to foster language skills at an earlier age and not create a disadvantage for students like my son Jack, who wish to continue Spanish throughout his high school career. There are a total of 58 students interested in taking the Spanish. Again, that's 45 presently enrolled, 13 on the waiting list, in 7th grade. If scheduling constraints only permit 2 Spanish classes and there is no class size cap in existence, it may be possible, though not optimal, for a language class to have the present 2 classes consisting of 29 students each. Again, I would not recommend this if it were not for the lack of attention to this situation earlier in the year, which may have allowed for a more equitable and pedagogically sound decision. It is my understanding that the lottery has been implemented in previous years in the district. In the over 20 years that I have been a middle school teacher, I have never heard of any other district in the area doing this as a means for selecting students in their foreign language programs. It has been my experience as an educator that whenever there is a potentially controversial or unpleasant decision, that is best to be as forthright and transparent as possible with parents. It is also beneficial to consider maintaining dialogue with parents and including them in a shared decision-making process when appropriate. I appreciate the efforts of your talented teaching staff and guidance counselor and the daunting scheduling tasks that administrators face. I want to thank you, Mr. Phelan, for meeting with me right now and also with Mr. Chemnitzer this morning. I understand that you met. I hope that there was a more equitable solution that was discussed, and I hope that you'll be able to share it with me, if not tonight, sometime by the end of this week. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks very much for being here. Does anyone else have a comment to make? Okay, well, I mean, I'll say that Mr. Phelan did inform the board of issues related to the enrollment in Spanish for 7th graders, and it will be a topic we will be discussing later this evening, kind of what's going on with that, get filled in more on that. But thank you for being here to express your concern about this issue. Hopefully we can come to some kind of resolution around it.
Is that a decision that's going to be closed, so I won't be able to hear it? Or
No, it'll be in public session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on then to reports and discussion. Our first topic is 2013-14 board goal development process. So in your binders, we have the most recent draft of our board goals. And I think we need to take some time to really try and hash out what's good and what needs to be changed. I guess I'm thinking that it might be nice if we could refine them enough so that at our September 10th meeting, we could actually approve our board goals. So I know Deirdre, thank you for giving some feedback. I also want to just clarify for those of you who are new that my thought around the goals that are related to committees, it's not really goals like, basically I took people's ideas for goals and took out those that seemed like they would be better situated in a committee and then put that there for the committees to consider, and all our committees are open to whatever the ideas are, so they'll go to committee. But when we finally approve goals, they'll be the actual just goals. It won't be the parts that are for committees, which doesn't mean that other work isn't happening. It just means they're situated better there. So I'm going to open it up because since I really did a lot of this work, everyone knows what I think, so.
You want me to jump right in?
Go ahead, somebody.
Okay, so I thank you for continuing to put together everyone's ideas and thoughts. I tried to sort of reevaluate what it is we're doing in my head, and to me, we need to differentiate what we want to accomplish as a board versus what we want to do with our goals. So remember, what we write as goals are directly then put in superintendent's evaluation, and we evaluate the superintendent on that specifically at the end of the year. So if we have a goal that says we want to communicate with parents more as a Board of Ed, we should do that, and we should accomplish that as a board, but we can't certainly evaluate the superintendent on how we accomplish that as a board. So I think we need to be careful about what it is we make as a goal versus what it is that we want to accomplish during the course of the year as, you know, individuals or as a team. I think that we need to be careful, and it seems like going back through all the years, we've done it in a different way almost every year. But last year we tried to be very specific about the board setting the direction and the vision, and letting the superintendent come back with the how and what to get to that place. And that's where the indicators of progress came in. So I liked that approach, and then we could give feedback on the indicators of progress. So to me, the very clear ones are technology and lunch, in that
Food service.
Food service.
Food service. So that we've done a lot of work, we've invested a lot of money into bringing both of those areas to a place where a lot of work can happen this year. And we, as a board, could say a goal is we want to improve food services in a way that makes it more financially sustainable and better food. And the superintendent can come up with, 3, 7, whatever different ways of how and what that means that he thinks is reasonable, and we can approve that. And then that way, at the end of the year when we're writing our evaluations, it's very easy to know what we're evaluating. So those are the two that are like the sort of the easy no-brainers to me. Like, we know we want to get that done. It seems like it's work that's going to get done anyway, and we need to kind of know that we want it accomplished to a certain endpoint by the end of the year. Some of the other ones I think we should get done as well. I don't know that they're as easy to say, I'm going to evaluate the superintendent and how he's going to implement these. So communications, I think, is very important and came up in almost everyone's board goals, but it didn't really come up in the same way in everyone's board goals. So, some people viewed communications in website, ease of use, celebrating achievements, communicating achievements of our students and our teachers, communicating into increased enrollment, communicating to collaborate with the greater educational community, communicating with the state education department, communicating with families to engage in more learning. So I can't imagine how we could incorporate that into a goal and say, then how is the superintendent going to implement that in a way that makes all 7 of us happy? We'll have 7 different ideas about that. I do think that all of those ideas are really important, and we can work towards them and agree to work towards all of them, either in the communication committee or together at ad hoc committees. But I'm finding a hard time figuring out how to make that something that we're going to be evaluating at the end of the year.
Well, I will say that I think you made a great point about previous ways of approaching this, which is to kind of then take a document like this and give it to Joe and say, okay, what are the indicators you think, either taking the ones that we have here or other ones that you have, and what would be your suggestions for that, since, as Diane points out, it's you and your team that are really implementing that. So one way to go is to hand this over to you.
Very clever.
I'm really liking this comment. But that, because we have done that, yes, in the past, so. But that would be one thought, to refine the indicators, which I agree, I think we all know that the last two goals are a little more specific. The other ones have some specific, some a little less so. But since you're the one that does the job, you might have a better sense of how to solidify it. But then we would give feedback on where that met our goals and that.
To that point of having these first two goals that are a little bit more open-ended, and I would suggest maybe in an effort to refine the communication goal, it should be a board goal to promote more open dialogue with the community, back and forth, and then it's up to Joe to figure out how we can do that. But to promote that sort of give and take, and hopefully have the community feel confident that they're getting information that they need, and they can request information that they need or want in a fairly seamless fashion. And then how we do that becomes, the list of indicators.
Are people comfortable with the 4 broader goals, like minus the indicators, the goals that more or less? I mean, I'm not necessarily asking for like wordsmithing, but we could do that. Or, people feel comfortable with them broadly speaking.
To some degree, I think the indicators appeared because in our last meeting, there was a sort of a question about how to translate from very broad strokes, ideas of what the board would hope to see accomplished into things that might be short-term goals, medium-range goals, long-term goals. So in a sense, even if these indicators don't sort of remain in this document or find their way into the form of goals that will directly map onto what Joe is sort of talking about with us every year, it seems a useful exercise to generate some of these ideas from within this group, if only to kind of get the thought process going and have that conversation. So I agree that if it's a laundry list, as it were, of many different things that might not be achievable in a single year, it's still a valuable process to undertake.
Diane?
So I agree with you, Diane, on the last two make more sense and they're more specific, although I don't know the way the technology is written. If you just take the top part that it's a goal, it's more of a statement than a goal, so that might need a little tweaking. And I think the indicators are good so that Joe can kind of take the direction we mean in our broader goal. So I think they're good, but I like the 4 ideas as goals, but maybe not necessarily with all the different indicators. I think they're more like guidelines for Joe when he kind of decides how he's going to work them out.
So how do you feel about taking these and working on it?
I'm fine with that. I think as a practical matter, if we go that direction, and it might be the right direction to go in, we're not going to be approving goals in 2 weeks. It's going to add to the time, because I'm going to need time to do what you're asking me to do, then bring it back to you, and I would anticipate we're discussing that at our next meeting, tweaking it, refining it. I like this, I don't like that. So it pushes it out another 2 weeks, I think, just as a practical matter. That said, there have been some years when we haven't finalized goals until late October, so it's not unprecedented. Obviously, the sooner you do it, then everybody else's goals get developed, and the later it takes us to get to that point, then that kind of forestalls other people writing their goals that depend on that. But I'm not, unless anybody on the board feels it's a deal breaker, I'd rather have goals that are written that everybody's comfortable with and take another few weeks than approve something that people aren't totally comfortable with, just for the sake of saying, yeah, we got them done by the first week in September. So that's all. I mean, we've done it this way before. I'll take some of my own artistic liberties with some wordsmithing, but I think the 4 core goals are worthwhile and appropriate, and I think there's a lot there to work with. It's not like I'd be starting with a blank slate.
Right.
So I'm willing to give it a shot.
Okay. Does everyone else feel that makes sense?
That's your pleasure.
Do you feel like these 4 goals are achievable this year? Because sometimes you've said, 4 goals is too many, try and focus more on 3 goals. Some of these are going to have to happen anyway.
As always, it depends. It's more than just the number. It's the content of the goals, and I'd want to maybe a little more time to mull that. But just at first blush, I don't think they're outrageous. And actually, the proof of the pudding may be in the indicators. If there are 20 indicators for each goal, then I'm going to say there's no way that'll get done. But if there are a reasonable number of achievable indicators that accompany each of those goals. Again, the way my thinking right now is, I don't, and less so with the last 2 because, the more cut and dried and focused they are, I think the narrower the scope of what has to be done and what the indicators are to demonstrate that. So, my initial reaction is probably.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments on this? All right. Great. Well, that sounds like a good plan.
I'll give it a shot and bring
Great.
something to you at the next
Excellent.
meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So our goal will be what will that be, the 24th of September?
Likely, if we
Let's try
discuss and bring it to some level of closure at our next meeting, then we can put them on
Right.
for approval at the 27th.
24th. Okay.
Or is it whatever that
28th. All right. Great. Thanks, everybody.
That works.
We move on now to board committee reports. Is there one committee that?
There may be one. This is an exercise in memory retention or memory loss in my case. The only committee that's met this summer has been the policy committee. One of their recommendations were the policies that the board acted on at the last meeting. I put it on the agenda just because I didn't remember whether there were other pieces that needed to be reported out, so I wanted to have it there as a placeholder.
I have to cop to the fact that I said that I would do the minutes and I didn't do them. So that is, I accept full responsibility for that. But I think that since there's going to be policy committee meetings before the next meeting of the board, that we should probably just report on both of those meetings at the next meeting.
Okay.
I think we just finished up those 2 policies.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, we started having some conversation about the kind of the
The potential of the review process.
Right,
But I
right.
didn't have everybody at the meeting. You were.
Yeah, I was
Right.
there.
I think so.
We talked about, having a second meeting every month so that we
Right.
could kind of start
Yeah.
reviewing old,
But-
already existing policies.
So we're going to be talking about that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I put it on there just not to forestall more discussion on that, but I didn't think that we had a lot to roll out beyond the policies that we acted on at the last meeting. So.
Okay. All right. Very good. Then we'll move on to our next section of comments. We have good news. Does anyone have any good news?
Do you mind if I shut the door? I think there's a bat or a bird that's flying in the hallway.
Please do.
Oh my God, you're right. I just thought that.
Sauces come in here.
Are you walking towards me?
Mr. Bird.
With Nicole?
I was thinking about just opening the front door, maybe.
Yeah, a bunch of his friends come in. I do feel,
It doesn't look like a bat.
No, it's not a bat, it's a bird, it's a real bird.
kind of look baddish to me, but
I'll give Sheldon a call.
baddish. Bat-like.
Certainly some
Good call.
interesting news. Maybe we'll get some good news about that. Thank you for alerting us.
A little excitement for the panda fans.
All right, while Tom works to get the bird out of the way. Does anyone have any good news?
Tom went to get the bird out of the hall.
All right, we'll move on now to old business. I think we have a few different issues related to old business in your packet. The first one is a draft letter from the board and the superintendent to parents regarding state testing and the Common Core standards. Let's see, I appreciate, Diane, you got back with a few comments that I think are valuable. One of which is to change the word being offered AIS services, since it's not an offer, it's a requirement. So I think that can be adjusted.
Okay.
And concerns about the bullet point explanation of the tests, which, if that was a concern on the part of other people, could be maybe, kind of summarized a little more, rather than explicated that way. Any other comments, though, more generally about the letter? And it'd certainly be nice to know there's, support from the full board to send out the letter. And there is some interplay with an issue related to the complexity of AIS services now, as Joe has informed us previously, that we don't have specific student scores yet, and on the state tests, I guess
We have the scores, we don't have the score reports that get sent out to each parent, so.
I see, that's more explicit in its explanation. You just have like the number?
Yeah,
Okay.
and you're right, the individual score reports are more detailed, and they're written to make whatever sense a reasonable parent could make out of them when they get it in the mail at home, but they have the numbers, so.
Right. And then there are issues related to that, I mean, just in terms of this piece of the letter around AIS, which is that, as you report to us, that the Board of Regents is even considering changing all that. So, if there's support for the letter more generally, the concept of sort of reworking some of that to, try to explain a little bit some of the complexity there without, not necessarily getting into a lot of details, but letting people know that it's not let them know what's happening here. So that's one thought in reaction to some of the feedback, is that maybe that piece of it also could be a little reworded so that, now remember the concept is that this letter would go to all parents in the district, some of whom kids didn't even take state tests because they're not in 3rd through 8th grade, but so some of that rewording might be, I think, useful. But Lisa?
I was just going to say that I also understand, based on a conversation I had with Dr. Davenport, that the district also doesn't have what they're hoping to get some further information from the state education department on how to apply the AIS standards to the new assessment test scoring. And until they get that additional information, a lot of the determinations about AIS is guesswork based on previous practice. And, so I'm not sure how explicit we're even in a position to be about that subject.
Right. Well, my thought is that if we at least kind of alerted people to this sort of changing landscape around all of this, then people know that, because I think Diane raised a good point today, but it is in some kids' schedules already.
Yeah.
So having at least some context to understand what that's about is But, as I said, it'll be challenging because we don't want to get to such a high level of specificity, and we don't even have that, but at least alerting people to some of the issues. I haven't, until seeing really more explanation today about that, I haven't really thought that through, and it was definitely a very collaboration between Deirdre and myself, and then Joe. Diane?
So, didn't the chancellor, didn't Mr. King send, isn't there going to be a letter for parents that he's recommending the schools send out? Are we going to be sending that out?
That's for us to decide. It's
So
not
that's
a
not
requirement,
decided,
of
yeah.
course, but
So it's possible.
since we haven't even gotten the score reports in to send out to parents, we haven't even crossed that bridge, and there's a lot of things in play here. I'm not sure whether we want to send the commissioner's letter and send the board's letter, or one and not the other. I mean, it gets complicated.
So we might need to almost wait till we have that letter to determine if we want to send both or one or none.
Well,
I mean, something.
I guess I'd weigh in more on the side of explaining it ourselves than taking the commissioner's explanation, because with all due respect to our commissioner, I mean, he has a point of view, and he has I'll just put it that way. He has a point of view, and it may or may not intersect with ours. So I'm not saying what he's saying is wrong, if there's anything inaccurate in what he's saying, but he's spinning it, and he's spinning it. I'm not sure that I want to necessarily throw that letter in every packet, but I'd want to think about that some more before we have, and we will have some time, because we still haven't gotten the letters yet.
But this letter would go separate. It wouldn't be with the scores. It would be a separate mailing to all the parents.
I think that was our thinking.
Yeah. I didn't think all these things were going to intersect so that we'd actually say, okay, we've got a score report and our letter and his letter, and what do we put in the envelope? I mean, my guess is that they're all going to be ready for prime time at a different time, so we'll probably wind up doing well, except for the commissioner's letter. That would be ready when the score reports go out, so.
Diane?
So I have a couple of comments, broadly and specifically. Broadly, I like the letter, and I appreciate your working on it. I almost wonder if I feel like it assumes that every person that this is going to is intimately familiar with the Common Core state standards and new curriculums, and I'm not sure if maybe a sentence about that transition would help some people in the first couple of paragraphs. I think you wrote in the third paragraph, and in general, continuing on the general terms, it feels long, and I think you get your point across better in a shorter letter, because people are lazy, basically. It's another letter in the mail. So I agree that some of the specific parts about what went wrong in the test could be summarized, and that would be really good. The specifics would be really good information for feedback for the state education department, where we could sort of summarize that there were, significant implementation problems this year that the state and we are aware of that could have affected the scores. Specifically, you wrote, we believe that the state has not allowed adequate time for teachers and students to work the changes to the curriculum. I think that's too generous. It's not we believe, it is a fact that the state has not allowed, and it's a fact that the state acknowledges. And I think you could say that. It's a fact the state education department acknowledges that they do not give adequate time to implement these. And to that point that they're not even holding, school districts or teachers accountable for this year's results. So, that gives validity to the problems with this year's results. In the second paragraph, I was curious about the statement about these mandates lacking grounding in educational research. I think from our past conversations, the grounding in educational research pertains to the actual testing and the results, not towards the research that went into the Common Core standards. And because it's within those first two paragraphs that talks about how much we support the Common Core standards and new curriculum, it feels like you're suggesting the Common Core standards are not based on research. But I think you're trying to say the results are not firmly validated in what they're actually trying to reflect. And then as I was reading it, it felt to me like it came to a good, logical, sort of natural end when you got to, we encourage you to be in contact with your student teachers and building principals. And I like that you address the AIS and that, your child may be given AIS, and if you have questions to contact your service. Like the last two paragraphs felt like it sort of reiterated our vision, and it was sort of a nice ending there. That's just my 2 cents about that. But then the other part I wanted to know is, do we want to include any information about our actual test results because they are available now? Or do we want to just focus on this and get it out? I mean, there are some things that we do well, and that's evident in our test results, and that is, as our students move up through grades, our test results improve between 3rd grade and 8th grade. And that's not a lot, that's not something most other school districts can show. And it's not something that I've even seen on the majority of school districts I've looked at in both Dutchess County and Westchester County. And if you compare our results to the state average, to the Dutchess County average, and to the Westchester average, there's some numbers there that are, I'm not going to say, our numbers are good because these results are terrible across the state, but they're actually pretty good comparable to some other schools. I really hesitate to be specific about that just because this is permanently documented here, but but they are not as, there are some things that are reassuring in these grades. And I'd actually, a different time, would like Marvin to come back and interpret the results of these and comparative to those other ones.
All right, well, those are all good comments, I think, for sure. And I think, I'm comfortable trying to have us take that and rework, give some thought to how to work it into. And I agree it's long and needs to tighten up. And certainly by getting rid of those bullet points, at least initially. Any other comments on this, or suggestions, thoughts on improving it? Or?
Is there still general support on the part of the board to continue to try to do this work? Because it's a lot of work to do if people aren't feeling like this is, the general tenor of this is something that they'll ultimately want to support. We don't have the time just to do an academic exercise here, so.
Yeah.
Just want to throw that out. That's
Yeah,
all.
I support sending this letter. I absolutely think it's our duty to communicate to parents, to say, this is what's going on out there, and don't panic. We're completely on board with what you're feeling. We understand it, but this is the good that's going to come out of it ultimately. And I think that's a really positive message to send to our community, and I think it's mostly done really well. I think, I agree. If we could get it down to a page, that would probably be great. And that the bullet points don't really
Help.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a good question on Joe's part, because certainly Deirdre and I don't want to work on it more than people are like, we love that was really, you made a nice letter, but guess what? We don't want you to send it, so.
Can I just say one other thing? While we were working on this process, I actually sort of went back in my email and found the letter you wrote to parents of the families where the students were taking these tests, Joe. It was a very thoughtful, I think very helpful letter, and I like the idea of this really being a joint effort between you, the administrators, the board, to communicate back, sort of at the end of that process where we are looking forward, and taking the opportunity at those moments when people are looking for some leadership, for some sort of statement of who we are as a school district, I think is really important. So I think it's fantastic that this group can work to find the common ground to make such a statement.
Yeah, and you did share that with me, and not having a child in 3rd through 8th grade, I do agree that letter that Joe had sent out to parents around about the testing was a very good letter, and I think you're right. Like it's kind of a nice follow-up to that, particularly for those parents. But all other parents might be reading let's hope, are reading and understanding that something's going on out there, although your point about trying to articulate something a little succinctly about that change would be good, so. All right, well, people support, if there are no other comments, then we'll take the comments, which have been very useful thus far, and we'll try to tighten it up and edit and see what we can come up with. And then I guess my question is, if we would like to get it out sooner, would we want to even attempt to sort of work on this? And I don't know, our time, Deirdre, what time we have available to try and get something that we could send out as soon as possible, so to get feedback via email. Would that be comfortable for people to do that? Okay, and then if it turns out that we need more real hashing it out, then we'll just, we'll have it on the agenda for the 10th more specifically. Does that sound good? All right, well, thanks, everybody. I appreciate your comments. All right, other old business, I have a couple, but
I don't have any.
okay. The paperless board meetings, Lisa and Laura have agreed to take on looking into that again, but Lisa was not here for the last meeting where we volunteered her for that job, but has graciously agreed to it. But I think you had maybe asked if there was more direction from the board to like what things people are looking for. It was initiated actually from you guys, but what guidance, what kinds of things,
What I was really looking for is a sense of whether the board wanted us to research, have a conversation and then make a proposal to the board, or whether the board simply wanted us to review the options and report back more on the options. And I guess what our opinions about those options are. I don't have an opinion as to which of those two paths we should take. I'd like to know what the board's pleasure is on that.
Anyone?
I think I would go from the position that I would like to see you research what is available out there and report back to, what your thoughts are on, what might be the way to go, rather than make a recommendation as to which system we should use. That more general idea of what's out there and, what your opinion is of those systems.
I'm comfortable with that, yeah. I mean, I also, and the comparison to which Paul had done last fall or winter to maintaining it as we do it, that was the issue that Paul looked at, was what are the things we like about this, portability, ease of use, cost. Ultimately, the cost at that point was so much higher to go paperless that we didn't really move beyond that information, but those things might have shifted. So from my standpoint, those will be things I'll want to look at in comparing not just particular systems, which will be part of it if you're evaluating costs and ease of use and whatnot, but comparing it to the current system.
I'd also like to throw in that, if we're going to go to a paperless system, I would prefer a system that would allow me to use my own device rather than something that, where the district would have to purchase, computers or iPads or whatever device it happens to be. But I'd prefer to use my own device. That way I can use it at home or bring it to the school and use it, at the meeting or, whatever the case may be, rather than having the school have to invest in a device for me to use.
That might be part of the research is, pros and cons of using one's own device versus using a district-owned device as part of the mix.
Okay.
I guess another question I have is, would it be a system that if people wish to bring their own paper copies, would it be possible to do that? And so it's a kind of variable ability to read and work in the ways different people want to. Because we certainly don't want to create a bar for participation in local school boards, with the assumption that everyone owns a device they can bring to meetings.
So it's a tall order. Does that help?
We're meeting tomorrow.
You're on it. And I know, and Mark also, thank you, because Mark has offered to assist with any interpretation of
Yes,
sort of the
thank you
IT
very
piece
much.
of it. So that'll be helpful. Okay, great, thank you.
And also thank you to Meg for the work that she's put into to put information together for us ahead of our background.
Meg loves talking about that stuff. All right, moving on to, we still don't have a representative from this board to the Rhinebeck Science Foundation Board. I didn't know whether anything shifted in anyone's thinking over the past few weeks. We can maybe leave that open a little bit if people want, but certainly by the 10th, I think we should decide if we're going to have one. I would, if no one else feels they have the time or for whatever variety of reasons, I will then attempt to go to as many of those meetings as possible and fill that role, but if anyone has any comments on that now, please.
I don't interpret this as volunteering, but I will say.
Your hand was up.
But I will say that the liaison position that I had last year with the community concern for Rhinebeck youth, it's not clear to me that entity is going to be continuing this year. Or if it is, it's not going to be continuing immediately. And so, not that I have a lack of things to do with myself, but I could potentially be available to do that if other people have other commitments and I want to do my fair share.
Okay, well, why don't we talk then post this? I have to remember exactly how frequently the meetings were and what days. Maybe you know that already. Okay, well, why don't we follow up with that?
For the foundation?
For the foundation, yeah.
I can tell you that. It's
Okay.
the third Monday of the month. Usually, barring vacations and all that kind of stuff. It's a month. In the evening.
But you weren't volunteering?
Because
I felt really-
I don't want to step on anybody's toes.
Oh,
So if
okay,
somebody's
is there anyone else
considering
who'd like to?
volunteering, I don't want to sort of get in front of anybody else online. I'm just saying that if nobody is able to step into this position, I don't want you, Deirdre, to feel like you have to do
Okay,
it for
no.
lack of anybody else being available.
I'm comfortable with you taking on that role. Is anyone else interested? We want to wait that out?
It's kind of like in the Army when everybody steps back and they ask for a volunteer.
All right, well, why don't we'll make it, more official maybe on the 10th and
Sure.
and let that mull a little bit. Okay.
Just before the
But
first
thank you. Yes, that's right. Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate that. Okay, and then the last thing I have under old business is just the convention, which I now am not able to attend, but I don't know whether, I can't remember where it was left, whether some people have registered or some people have not, but maybe
I
one.
have
Three of
Okay.
us are registered.
Okay.
Yeah, so 4 of us.
4 of us.
Oh, fantastic. That's
Plus
great.
Joe.
Excellent. Well, very good. Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Good. Then we'll move on. We'll move on now. We're on old business still. Does anyone have any other old business?
I'm not sure if this qualifies as old business or other, so you can tell me. But
It's a new
we're
one.
going to be having the open houses, so.
Yes, I had that, right.
Okay.
But we could do that now. I had that under other, but we could do that now. So for those of you who are new to the board, board members usually go to the open house. You've probably seen board members speak and speak for a few minutes. And the first open house is Wednesday, the 11th of September. It's Chancellor. What we could do is just send an email out tomorrow, and people could look at the schedule and volunteer. I mean, if people aren't ready to kind of commit right now. There's the 11th, the 18th, the 19th, and the 26th. The first two are Chancellor, the 11th and the 18th, middle school on the 19th, and the high high school on the 26th, and you speak for just a few minutes. You know, you've all either done it or heard it. And I think the outline of our goals is there enough that one of the things we try to communicate is our goals and when we meet and how to communicate with the board. And I think, again, the outline of our goals is there enough that people could probably speak to that to some extent. So, I don't know, people are ready to kind of volunteer now or any particular date, or we could do it via email since you might need to look at your calendars. We'll do it by email? Should we do that?
Emails. I'm
Okay.
happy to volunteer by doing it by email. That's on the
Okay.
calendar.
Okay, let's do that. And then also, as long as we're talking schedule, so the first day for the staff is Tuesday, the
Third.
3rd. The staff, there's a staff-wide meeting in the auditorium. I say a few words on behalf of the board. Joe speaks. There's some other business things to do, and any board members who can make it. That morning at what time, Joe?
The coffee starts at 8 and the meeting starts at 8:30. And I only mention that because I think that time between 8 and 8:30 to talk with members of the staff is valuable time, and I think being there in the auditorium in a formal capacity as a board member is a nice
It's
show of
appreciated,
support.
yeah.
And yes, it is appreciated, so.
If you're able to make it on that Tuesday, and, you know, even if you have to run after a short time, the meeting itself doesn't
20
last.
minutes, maybe half an hour. Longer than that?
half an hour
Depends on how
easily,
long the
maybe
board
40
president
minutes.
speaks, but,
This one could be as long as, you know, plan an hour.
yeah. And people have gotten up and left in the middle to go to work too, and, you know, that's, you got it.
Right. So if you can. If you can't, you can't. That's fine. But it's certainly an open invitation and appreciated, I think, by staff. Any other old business? Okay, then we have a second opportunity for public comment. Members of the public? Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to other. I think we have a couple of other items.
Okay, I have two. I guess the quick one is to respond to an email I got later this afternoon from Deirdre, just in terms of where the Director of Technology and Communication process is. We've gotten eight full applications. Again, I'm not really surprised. I wasn't anticipating getting 20 or 30 or 40. And some of the 8 anyway look pretty solid and encouraging. So at this stage of the game, it's a case of kind of getting through all this back to school mania and pulling the committee together. I've had a good handful of people, a number of them who served on the committee we put together last spring to provide feedback on the cell
Technology,
process and
visioning.
technology. Right. A number of those people have said they're interested. So my next job is to pull them together, since we don't have to screen 50 or 40 or 50 applications down to a manageable. We could actually interview all of the people who had applied, unless there are some obvious ones that, you know, if they don't have administrative certification, then we're going to put them in the, you know, in the pile on the side. So we may actually be able to run the process a little more quickly, because we don't have to go through as much of that narrowing down process. And it looks like some good candidates in the bunch. So that's kind of where we're at. All we need is time to
Thank you.
Great.
move it along.
Excellent.
The second item is to follow up on the comments that were made earlier regarding foreign language. The 7th grade, and John Kennitzer and I have spent, you know, a fair amount of time today looking at options, and so as not to appear in any way to give this topic short shrift, we put a lot of advanced time in on this discussion, and I think we're really down to 2 options that seem to work. One of them is to hire an additional teacher. Now, we're talking about, and this is actually the challenge of this particular solution, because we'd be talking about hiring a .1 FTE teacher. That's one period every other day. And I anticipate that being a challenge to find somebody to commit to teaching one period every other day for the entire school year. I mean, we've kind of gone through the list of the usual suspects who we know are out there who've done sub-teaching for us, and we've gotten lucky a few times in other years. I'm less optimistic, and it's got little to do with the fact that we're sitting here a week before school starting. I think if we were having this conversation in June, we'd be having the same head scratching. Who are we going to find who is certified, who is a reasonably good teacher, who is available for and making that commitment for an entire school year for very little teaching. So I think that would be the challenge with that solution, and it's kind of tilting me towards the other option, which is one of the options that Tony brought up earlier in her comments, and that is to look at populating the current classes with more kids. I mean, the downside, from my perspective, is obvious. You want to keep class sizes as small as reasonably possible. Already they're 22 and 23, or 23 or 20. I mean, they're not small classes now, but they're nice sized classes because of other considerations, things like the fact that the foreign language classes alternate with computer classes, and there are only so many workstations in the computer room. We're really limited to 28 kids in a class max, which is a lot of kids, and it doesn't make me happy to have that kind of a situation. Not that it's unprecedented. It's definitely a drawback. I would think that the advantage would be that some of those students who wanted Spanish will get Spanish. So again, there are trade-offs there. So if my numbers are correct, and they've kind of been moving a little bit, but clearly 11 students who had signed up for Spanish as their first choice had their names drawn out of a hat at random and were given their second choice. So certainly those are students whose parents appear to want them to take Spanish, and certainly would put them at the top of the list. And we could, with class sizes of 28 in each of those two sections, we could accommodate those requests. I think where it gets dicier is that some of the people on the list, I think Tony threw out the number 14 that you got from 13. Yeah, I think it's actually up to 14 now. Some of those 14, I think 2 or 3 of them are students who didn't hand in any kind of preference for a course. And when you're trying to balance course loads, if you get a paper back from a student and it's neither marked Spanish nor French, and you have seats in French and you're running short on seats in Spanish, you put them in French. And several of those, the parents of those students are now saying they want Spanish. So it's going to be impossible to put everybody who wants Spanish in those two classes. So right now I'm kind of leaning towards giving slots in those Spanish classes to the kids who signed up for Spanish according to what we asked them to do. Let us know by June, whatever. You've got the sheet in the packet at your tables, and did their due diligence and asked for Spanish, we can, it appears that we can accommodate them. Realistically, I don't think we can accommodate people who have changed their minds after the fact. We just have so many spaces. The only way around that would be if we could actually hire, find somebody who wanted to make a full year commitment to teaching 40 minutes every other day. We could try that, but I wouldn't, if I were a parent in that situation counting on that, I wouldn't count on it, because I think it'll be a long shot to find somebody. You never know. But again, I think we can accommodate those 11 lottery students, if you want to call them that, by putting them in those 2 classes and potentially bring the numbers up to 28. So again, it solves a problem. It creates another problem of a large class size, but we don't have a ton of options here. So.
Lisa?
Joe, I want to follow up on something that was in the email that you sent around on this subject earlier today. You had said that Ms. Peterson, who's the French teacher, was certified as a Spanish teacher. Now, I recognize that she hasn't taught Spanish, and she's not thrilled with the idea of teaching Spanish, but considering the downsides of having 28 kids in those 2 classes and, having some kids who aren't going to be able to get Spanish, would it be preferable to have her teach a small class, a small section of Spanish than to do it the other way?
Well, at the risk of having a public discussion about a specific teacher, I will only say that that discussion has been had, and that's not an interest.
Okay.
And I can't contractually or otherwise force somebody to teach something that they don't want to teach, and I think for good reasons. They want to do a good job, and they feel that they can't, unless they can do an outstanding job, they don't want to, and I respect that, quite frankly. So that's not an option. I mean, we've plowed that furrow in the field, and it's not going anywhere. So.
Deirdre?
Is this a problem we imagine may be coming up again in the future?
This is a problem we've had. I think John referenced that in his 9 years here, twice before so it's cyclical.
Okay.
So if it was something that was happening every year, I think we'd, at one time, just to give a little history and hopefully not to shock anybody in the room, but at one point in history before Mr. Chemnitzer's time, those decisions were made on a first-come, first-served basis. And so I'll tell you what, we had some years, we had kids lining up in front of the guidance office at 6:30 in the morning to get their paper in early, and we realized that wasn't working, obviously. So we, looking for something better than that, we went to something that would be a random selection. I mean, again, it's not a perfect solution, far from it. I'm not sure that there's anything illegal about it, but we could take that up with legal counsel. But some years it's a non-issue. Most years it's a non-issue. Every once in a while, for a reason that I can't say there's a reason for it, except this is what people want and this is what people don't want. It happens. So this is one of those years. Last year we didn't have a discussion about this. Everybody slotted nicely into really balanced classes, and it's not a problem.
Diane? I thought this had happened one other year, but maybe not. Have we thought about maybe contacting all the students that signed up for Spanish to see if, knowing that there may be a bigger class size, if they really want that? Because some kids may say, wow,
Well,
I put Spanish, but I don't necessarily care. If it's going to be 28 kids, I'd rather take French.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to open the floodgates, because we can't handle 25 kids in 2 classes that already have 22 and 23 kids in them. So that's why I think we have to, if that's the way we go, I think we have to draw some natural boundaries and say, you didn't ask for Spanish, so you got what was available, or you asked for Spanish, but if you just as soon stay in a smaller class in French and it really doesn't matter that much to you, then you can stay in front. I mean, I wouldn't just take all
No, I mean, the
those.
kids that
She
are
meant the
already in
kids
it, like the
in-
45 that are in
Oh,
it,
to see if they
contacting
still
them
wa-
back to see if, because sometimes they maybe don't care, maybe there's a few kids that'll
Well,
say,
you know what, I would, my sense is if there are people who decide they don't want to be in a class of 28 kids, they'll probably say, you know what, after the second day, take me out and put me in French. I imagine people who are in there, I'd be surprised if we have much of any people jumping ship. And my concern at this point, and John's concern too, is that we want to try to accommodate the kids for whom Spanish was their first choice. And there is a limited number of students, and numbers-wise, we can accommodate them in that class. I can't accommodate more than that in those classes, and it's not the ideal solution, but it is a solution.
Diane?
So I guess I have a couple of questions. If I recall correctly, at the upper level foreign language classes, we offer more in Spanish than we do in French. Is that correct? We offer AP and Spanish 5. I'm not sure.
I think Spanish 5 is the only thing we offer that's not in French, and only this year.
Okay.
And excuse me, that has, I mean, over a space of 15 years, I mean, that's kind of moved back and forth. And French has never had more enrollment than Spanish, but some years or some cycles, it's been a little closer in terms of student interest than other years. It's waned and waxed.
So in general, you can achieve a similar level of foreign language learning, regardless of which language you're in.
Yeah, in general.
The other thought is if you oversubscribe this class this year for 7th grade, then you have to plan what to do for 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th grade for those students, which is fine, but we have to think about that now. And as far as looking for a .1 teacher, just out of the box sort of ideas. Could this one class this year do an online foreign language class? We've done that in the high school. Or are there, we've talked about sharing resources with other schools. It's not uncommon for middle schools to have part-time foreign language teachers. Does Red Hook have a .4 foreign language teacher who might be available for .1 in the time of start? I don't know if you're even legally allowed to do that.
I know those are good thoughts. They don't come to my mind initially because they seem like even a longer shot than finding this. But I mean, I certainly wouldn't rule it out. But it would be a fluke that, say, Red Hook happened to have a part-time teacher who just happened to be coming through this way in the middle of the day when we have these courses blocked in, and schedule-wise they're pretty much blocked in because other courses play off. It's not just, and we talked about that too, I think these are pretty much in the middle of the day, if I'm recalling correctly. So, am I right on the schedule? It's not like it's, well, if the French was, the Spanish would be too. It's not like it's at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. It's, again, not by design, not just the way the schedule worked out. So it makes it more difficult to.
But you could inquire Red Hook to see if they have.
It's certainly worth asking the question. I wouldn't rule it out. I just don't want to give anybody false hope that there's somebody sitting up there just waiting to pick up another .1 FTE. Right. I mean, I think that would be a stretch.
As far as the online stuff, like my view of it is it's been unsuccessful. The Spanish 5 group that year, was it last year? The kids that were doing an online class for Spanish 5, I mean, you could confirm this, but I'm not even sure one kid completed it. Maybe one?
I think one kid did.
Out of initial interest of 7, it just doesn't.
Well, not all 7 even followed through and actually registered for it. It was initial interest of 7. I wound up being a couple of kids. I think one finished and a couple, not for me. Plus, then the other thing to think about there is I wouldn't advocate for having a small or even a medium-sized class of 7th graders taking an online course, you'd almost be saying, we're taking that Spanish 5 class that we just established, and we're now going to pull that teacher offline, assign that teacher to be teaching 7th grade for part of the time, and let those kids take an online course. And I think we have the same situation we had last year, which was patently unsuccessful.
So, I appreciate you filling us in on all this. I will, just like my comment is, I think the lottery, I know it's only been used a couple of other times, but I think it is really a problematic way to develop a schedule. I realize the constraints. So I think knowing that this is a possible problem, and certainly if we go to these 2 big classes, knowing how to address that in the future for this particular group is important. But a longer term sort of solution, as we can, to the extent that we can, might be worth thinking about. I'm not that happy about the lottery idea either, but I guess another question I just have is the language teachers been brought into this conversation to problem solve themselves?
I believe John's talked to all of them, part of the process being to dipstick their interest in teaching one of these courses, and well, that's the Batman. So they know what the issues are. And
Okay. Well, I think, does anyone else have any other comments? I mean, there really isn't a time for additional public comment, but I'm sure any engagement with Mr. Phelan additionally, or Mr. Kemnitzer is welcome. I think you have to go ahead and do what you guys have to do.
Okay, I mean, I would just I wanted to let you know, A, what the situation was, B, what the options, limited as they may be, seem to be, and kind of where I'm leaning. Again, I'm not asking you to vote on anything. I'm not sure you have to vote on anything, actually. But, I told John I would bring you up to speed. If there were any ideas, I'd be glad to sit down and talk with him some more. We obviously want to get this thing resolved as soon as we can.
So, yeah, and I would just say, too, I would just maybe throw it to either curriculum or communication to think about, because if these forms are filled out or not filled out by June 10th, and then I do realize that the scheduling is complicated, but the idea of parents really and students knowing what their schedule is going to be and having communication in advance. I know it's a challenge, or even communicating that it's a challenge when you know until the end of August, because the communication issue is also raised about AIS and when people open a schedule, what their expectations are versus a week before school starts, what you actually see can create a lot of anxiety for people.
Yeah, so even that's a fair point.
So maybe throw it to the communications committee to think about how we can. We did that for years ago. Really refined the kind of communication I know administrators worked on that went home to parents at the end of the summer, and I think the administrators did a really good job making those communications better, more efficient. So maybe looking at that again in terms of scheduling,
I think it's a good project.
Would be a good point. Are there any other comments about this issue? Yes.
I'll just
go
say,
ahead.
I am very appreciative of the care and the eloquence of the comments that have been brought to us on this subject, and it's in light of the goal for communication, it's very helpful for us moving forward, thinking about all these issues.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, do we have any other subjects for other?
No, you got the other one that I had on that list, so.
All right, great. So then we'll move on to our action items. Does anyone have anything to remove from the consent agenda? Okay, then may I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the consent items?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Laura. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. Everyone's going up and down. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the recommendation of David Airstock to conduct selection, classification, fitness testing for the 2012-13 fall
Sorry about
sport
that.
season, 13-14
Yeah.
fall sports season for additional hours as necessary.
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Lisa. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the 2-year probationary appointment of Justin Randall to the position of mathematics teacher assigned to Rhinebeck High School effective September 1, 2013, in the tenure area of mathematics, a salary of step 3 MA plus 2, $60,547, in accordance with the RTA salary schedule for 2013-14.
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Deirdre. Any questions? No. All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve Introduction to Engineering and Design, Psychology, and Social Psychology as new courses to be offered starting in the 2013-14 school year?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Lisa. Any questions or comments?
Just a comment, I got a call from a reporter from the Poughkeepsie Journal today who was doing his typical, back-to-school issue article and asked me if we were doing any, new programs or whatever this year, and I mentioned Introduction to Engineering and Design, and he was quite interested in that, so I would expect at least a small article in their back-to-school issue on that, and he's going to be talking to Brian McDonald tomorrow, I think, to get some more information, so get a little link out of that.
So I have a question, which is that, again, relating to scheduling and the school year starting next week. How will this be communicated to students and parents that they're available? Will everyone who's eligible to take these classes know that they could adjust their schedule accordingly to take these?
Well, these were floated out at the end of the school year, so...
This is just the kids have
formally, right, this is just formally approving
everyone has-
the courses. As far as I know, there's 27 kids signed up for Introduction to Engineering, I'm not sure.
I'm just,
how
the
many are in
psychology and the social psychology, I think we're a little later on. So I guess I just want to encourage that we be sure that the guidance office is ensuring that
I'll double check with Ed.
information on electives is being communicated to everyone. Okay, any other comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the selection of Exploring Psychology 9th edition, Myers, 2014, New York, Worth, 2014, is the textbook for the psychology and social psychology courses.
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Deirdre. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to award the 2013-14 cafeteria bids as approved by the Dover Union Free School District at their June 6, 2013 Board of Education meeting?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Lisa. Any questions or comments? Diane?
Joe, I'm sorry, I was trying to just read your email in response to my question right here. I'm not making it through. Could you summarize?
Yeah. Essentially, and I would make a suggestion here that we change the word award to accept, because we are not truly awarding bids. Dover's board has already awarded these bids. So we're accepting them, and we may or may not use some or all of them. We don't have to use them lock, stock, and barrel. There have been issues in past years, and Tom, you can jump in at any point if you need to, but there have been problems in other years with some of the pieces of a much larger bid not being used by us because they don't come up here, or they're based, the companies are based down in the southern end of the county, and they're not really interested in delivering bread every morning up here to the northwest corner of the county. So we have some options when that happens. We can use a bid that Duchess Bosse's puts together, so we can cherry pick a vendor off their bid list. I think in the case of bread, it's the same vendor, so that really doesn't get us anywhere. Or we could do our own bid, which is expensive to do a bidding process, which is why we use these other bids, because another district's already doing it, you know, in a consortium effort. Or depending on how much you know, we anticipate buying, we may be below the threshold for bidding it, so we don't have to bid it. We can just find a local vendor who will service our district, you know, on the schedule that we run, and use them. And when we've used as my understanding is, we've used combinations of all those things to ultimately get what we want. You know, we participate in the Dover bid because there are some things that they have that do benefit us to use, and there are others that are more South County companies that don't want to come up here, so we don't use them.
Any other questions?
Do we pay dues to be part of this bidding process?
I don't think so, do we?
For the BOCES, we do.
Well, because we're part of BOCES, so
Part
we're
of
paying.
BOCES, but the Dover, we don't pay Dover anything. They do this as really for the 4 school districts that do it across the northern Duchess. We have the same situation with milk. There are the ones who have won the award at BOCES will not come up here. And then the ones that have been awarded up here, some of them will only do Red Hook and Rhinebeck, while the other ones will do Pine Plains and Dover because they don't want to come across. It's not worth them to drive all the way over here to drop off this.
For the amount that we're buying.
Cost prohibitive to them, their prices will raise up. So it's not an easy, you know, when it comes to that. You know, last year, though, it was noted in the audit report that we, you know, did not use the bid for the bakery items. It's way under the bid threshold. That's number one. We only ended up paying like a penny more per roll. So yeah, we paid a little bit more, but what happened is the other vendor just wouldn't show up. And you call them up, why didn't you? Well, you know, you were the only people, so we decided not to do it. You know, so in reality, what should have happened before is when someone's not responsive, I should come to the board with the memo saying we'll no longer use this company because they're unresponsive to delivery. You know, I won't say vendor names here. We don't want to do that. We'd have to go in the executive session, but that's what happens over here. You know, they might be here for the 5 days. It's that one day you don't come, then all of a sudden we don't have it. We have to have somebody who's reliable.
Sure.
Just consistent.
Absolutely.
And the
Okay.
funny thing is the 2 companies that won the award, they're actually the same company. They're actually the same company. One is owned by the other, so it's the same company. It's the delivery routes,
Right. So it's
you
complicated.
know.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
So maybe we can pick up this conversation in Finance Committee. But I know at the end of every year, we always have a motion saying that we'll bid out with Dover, and there's some motion that says that we reviewed the success of the bidding program over the course of the year. But we don't actually really review it. So maybe this year we could talk about, you know, how much of the bidding process from Dover we actually do use. Does it benefit us? Would it be worthwhile to bid out, you know, form our own bidding process with Hyde Park and Red Hook? You know, maybe explore it just a little bit more.
Yeah, that would be, I think, a very appropriate topic for Finance Committee.
Okay, great. Any other questions? All those in favor? It's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the previous year's school tax bills, refunding a total of $2,480.79 in reduction adjustments, and to make the appropriate refund to the property owner from the district's tax tertiary reserve?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Deirdre. Any questions? All those in favor? It's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve 2012-13 budget transfers in accordance with the Board of Education policy number 6150 for the school year ending June 30th, 2013.
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Lisa. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? It's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the list of additional emergency conditional substitute teachers and non-instructional staff for the 2013-14 school year?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Deirdre. Any questions? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the following resolution? Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby authorizes the board president and superintendent of schools to execute the implementation certification form for its annual professional performance review for classroom teachers and building principals covered pursuant to Education Law Section 3012C and Part 3020 of the Rules of the Board of Regents.
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Lisa. Any questions? So this, I guess this is like a formality that the state's requiring us to do.
Yeah, we have to basically tell them that we have a 2-year plan and we're
Right.
entering the second year and we're doing our level best to do what the plan says.
Okay, great. Any other questions? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the 3-year probationary appointment of Cassie Wintermantle to the position of school psychologist assigned to Oakley Middle School and Rhinebeck High School effective September 1, 2013 in the school psychologist tenure area at a salary of step 1 MA plus 30, $60,088 in accordance with the RTA salary schedule for 2013-14.
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Deirdre. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. Do we have anything to executive session?
I don't.
No. Okay. We do not have executive session, so may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Deirdre. All those in favor? That's unanimous. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Okay.